I don't know about you guys, but I am sick and tired of listening to all of these leftist, socialist, progressive types whine, moan, and complain about this train derailment and explosion in Ohio. They're so concerned about the environment all the time. Clearly, they don't know that it's capitalism and railroads that made America great. And we need more of it, at least according to the president. How many times have we heard him say in the last year or so that, where is it written that America can't be a manufacturer? Florida Maquis, what if this was your neighborhood? Wouldn't you be concerned? Well, I just find it very odd that when those who are concerned about the environment on a daily basis and a weekly basis stand up and say we should do this and we shouldn't do that, and there needs to be more safety regulations, that they're seen as anti-capitalist and part of the problem and getting in the way of big business. But when something like this happens, all of a sudden, everybody on the right wants to pretend now they're concerned about the environment, concerned about what's getting put into our water and our air. Don't you find that strange? Well, Florida Maquis, this is way different. This is way more. It's actually way less. And the reason you think it's more, and the reason you think it's worse is because of, are you ready for this? PSYOPs 101. It's something called the availability heuristic that we have been talking about over at the Florida Maquis Patreon channel since literally day one. Honestly, I think this was the very first thing that we talked about because it is so effective. Some people complain, Florida Maquis, why do you, at the beginning of every video, talk about your Patreon channel? Well, this is the perfect example of why you think what happened in Ohio is way worse than what goes on right down the road from where this happened every single day. What if I told you literally right down the river, just east of where this happened, they have been dumping millions of tons of poisons into the water, into the air for decades. And you, on the right, have defended their right to do so for quite a long time. If you'd like to join us at the Florida Maquis Patreon channel, where you can have a clear mind and see things like this, it's only $1 per month. Capitalism confirmed. It's even less if you sign up for an entire year and fully refundable first 90 days. We can partner with Vimeo, take the gloves off. You guys know the deal. Now, availability heuristic. The tendency to estimate the likelihood or importance of something based on how easily we can think of an example. See this big green dot? This is all the information in the world. This little red dot, that's what you're focusing on right now. The information most available to you. Is it recent? Is it emotional? Is it vivid? Is it recent? Is it emotional? Is it vivid? Now, I'm going to show you on the map. Now, last time I used a map, I told folks this entire area bounded on the north by Milwaukee and Detroit, going down to St. Louis, around Evansville, Lexington, Columbus, all the way over here to Pittsburgh, has been being poisoned for literally 100 years, probably 70 at a real high level, but almost 100 years. Now, we're going to zoom in. You see this little red, tiny little squiggle right here? This is about a 10-mile section of the train track where this derailment occurred, East Palestine. And where it actually occurred is just, generally speaking, just east of town right here. Now, I have looked very closely. There are no major waterways right around here. About 13 miles to the south, is the Ohio River. But if you go just east, you run into some place very familiar. That's right. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Well, Florida Maquis, what's going on in Pittsburgh? Why would you compare them to East Palestine? Didn't you see the size of that cloud? Really? That's adorable. This cloud is adorable compared to what's been going on in Pittsburgh for years. Chemicals linked to birth defects are being dumped in Pittsburgh's rivers, reports. This is from, it's 2022, I believe. September 28, 2022. Wait until you read the numbers here. See, this is where you're going to kick back into your non-environmentalist brain, because it's going to sound like I'm speaking like a socialist environmentalist. More than 50 years after the passage of the National Clean Water Act, industrial polluters still regularly dump toxic chemicals linked to birth defects and cancer into local waterways, according to a new report. Among major watershed regions nationwide, the Ohio River Basin received the largest volume of toxic chemical discharges by weight in 2020, according to the report published today by the Penn Environment Research and Policy Center. Other heavily polluted watersheds include the Mid-Atlantic watershed, which encompasses part of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, pay attention there, Delaware, and New York. Delaware. Do we know somebody from Delaware? And the South Atlantic Gulf, which encompasses, believe it or not, Florida and part of surrounding states. Now, let's get down to the numbers. The Lower Monongahela watershed, which encompasses much of southwestern Pennsylvania, ranks 4th nationally for releases of chemicals that cause reproductive harm into waterways. Around 7,364 pounds. The numbers get a lot bigger. Of these chemicals were dumped into the watershed's rivers and streams in 2020. Now, let's look at toxic releases in pounds. Upper Ohio, 6,592. Middle Wabash, Little Vermilion, 13,000. Illinois and Indiana. Lehigh in Pennsylvania. In the Pittsburgh area, U.S. Steel's Clairton Coke Works, about 15 miles south of downtown Pittsburgh, you ready for this number? Dumped more than 2.1 million pounds of toxic chemicals into local waterways, making it the top industrial water polluter in Pennsylvania. The Clairton Coke Works ranks 17th on a list in the report of the top 50 industrial water polluters by volume in the country. Statewide, the report found that more than 5.8 million pounds of toxic substances were dumped into waterways by industrial sites across the Commonwealth in 2020, including chemicals like nitrates, farming and byproducts from petroleum, steel and coal-related industries that are linked to cancer, reproductive harm, and developmental issues in children. A total of 22,621 pounds of chemicals linked specifically to reproductive harm were released into the state's waterways in 2020. At the national level, the report found that 193.6 million pounds of toxic substances were dumped into U.S. waterways in 2020. Cleveland Cliffs Steel Corporation in Rockport, Indiana, 11.9 million pounds of toxic chemicals into the lower Ohio. Indiana and Kentucky, making the worst industrial water polluter in the country. Now, the reason you haven't seen the president down there is because the last year he has been talking about and touting, this is him in Hagerstown, Maryland, standing in front of a bunch of diesel engines, talking about American manufacturing. Guess what you make diesel engines out of? He's talking about ramping up steel production. The environmentalists literally have to be losing their minds. Here's him at a Mack truck factory. What do you think they make Mack trucks out of? This entire region, and you know, those evil, terrible, horrible, socialist, progressive environmentalists, this entire region has been getting poisoned for decades and decades and decades, as if the Ohio River is some pristine waterway. And you think that this little bitty, witsy bitsy, tiny derailment right here is going to make, it's a drop in the bucket. It's a drop in the bucket. Now, what I really think what's happened with some folks is that this is East Palestine. There's also or Palestine, I guess, for some people. There's also an East Palestine, a New Palestine, Ohio, way down here. And this is what I think some people thought, because they're confused with New Palestine, Indiana. There's also a New Palestine, Ohio, not East, but New. And it shows it right on the Ohio River. But like that would matter. Like that would matter when you compare what has been done to the Ohio River Valley by Pittsburgh and the steelworks and business run amok compared to this one. You can barely even see this. You see this little red line right here? You might not even be able to. You have to squint. This is about a 10-mile section of the track. And I made it that big so you could see it. Where this actually occurred was about right here, where it says Leak Oil Company right here. And I looked really, really close. There's not any real major waterways around this. People are like, oh, this is going to, get into the Ohio. I think they're talking about the cloud, that drifted over here. But if you want to talk about this one cloud that's long gone, by the way, and you want to compare it to what Pittsburgh has done, you want to compare it to what Pittsburgh has done to the Ohio River Valley. Millions and millions and millions of tons dumped into the waters day after day after day after day after day. And now they're complaining about Texas and Michigan officials. They didn't know the water. You see, they're even trying to take the water in the soil from this and put it in trucks and take it places where it can be treated and dealt with. And they're flipping out about this. That doesn't happen in Pittsburgh. When they decide they want to dump their chemicals into the rivers and all their poisons and all these things that make people sterile into the rivers, nobody's trying to mitigate. You don't see big trucks trying to, mitigate all of that poison that's being caused by Pittsburgh. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, a lot of people don't know this because they don't pay attention to it. Because they don't care about environmental issues. Why? Because that would make them a leftist. They might get labeled a socialist, caring about the environment. This is what is so unbelievably hypocritical. I see coming out of the right now, all these right-wing outlets complaining about this issue in Ohio, as if you gave a damn. As if anybody from the right gave a damn about the environment. Governor DeSantis, back in 19, his first speech, his inaugural speech, the speech he gave at his swearing in, was all about protecting Florida's water resources, and he has pledged billions and billions and billions to cleaning up Florida's waterways and protecting the environment. Even the left has had to admit this. You can Google this, DeSantis, Florida water resources. Even the left and the conservationists and the environmentalists have had to admit that he has been the most environmentally sound governor Florida's ever had. It's number one priority. Even Google admits this. What has DeSantis done for clean water? Pursued several actions to improve the state's water quality, established the Blue-Green Algae Task Force, causes and solution to Florida's red tide crisis, $40 million to address that problem, $3 billion for the Everglades, I believe the number was, $3.5 billion. $3.5 billion over 4 years for the Everglades restoration and protection of Florida's water resources. See, that's what they don't want you to know about. Because once again, what would that do? That would make you a socialist. And don't say it doesn't. No, it doesn't, Monkey. Socialism totally different. Every time someone has stood up and said, we need to put the handcuffs on this business, or not allow this thing to be built over here, or not allow that thing to be built over there, you always see those right-wing talking heads come out and say, these socialists are destroying economy in America and they won't allow business to do it. This is why. See, when something like this happens, everybody gets all up in arms. But when it happens every day, nobody cares. And why is that? PSYOPs. We'll go back to it. The reason you don't care about the poisons that get dumped every day into our environment is because they're not on the news. And there's not these big giant clouds and all of this crap going on. Availability heuristic. You see, it's in the news, so you care. When it's not in the news, meaning all the information, the big green dot here, you don't give a rat's ass. The information most available to you, what shows up in your news feed, and what's all over YouTube, recent, emotional, vivid, is the reason you care. And I guarantee in a month, you won't. I guarantee in a month, you will not give one rat's ass about the environment. Because That's how the right wing works. They get all fired up over something and they don't realize what they're talking about, or that somebody's tried to fix it for years and years and years, because they don't want to get labeled. Even Biden came out and said, I'm a capitalist. I want, business. I want a return to manufacturing in America. The environmentalists on the left literally have to be throwing up, because they're like, what world is this? What world is this? That they're clearly, capitalists in the Republican Party that do not give a crap about the birds or the trees or the air or the water. They don't. Because they let it go on. They just get it out of the news. They know as soon as they get it out of the news cycle, you won't care. And you'll do nothing. And he can go, tout giant diesel engines and stand in front of places that use tons and tons and tons of steel, knowing full well that chemicals linked to birth defects and all sorts of other problems are dumped into the rivers. And here, the reason this is so specific is because it's literally a hop, skip, and a jump from where this derailment happened. That's what makes this so funny. I mean, it's not funny, but it is funny. In the sense that the right wing is all losing their mind over what happened here this one time, that they're really attempting now to clean up, and they've got full court press there and trucks being loaded, and they're getting rid of the dirt. They're even getting rid of the water that was used to put out the fire. I mean, they're doing everything they can to clean it up here. And meanwhile, right here, poisoning every day. Poisons dumped by the tons every day right into the river, and nobody stops it and nobody cares. Why? Real simple. It's not in the news. There's no giant cloud that you could look at in the sky, or pictures of the giant clouds. Well, I mean, you could show the pictures of the steel mills, I guess, and all the poisons, but you would get labeled a socialist, and nobody wants that. Whatever you do, don't get labeled a socialist. That makes you an enemy of freedom, an enemy of democracy, an enemy of everything else. Now do you see it? Now do you see the PSYOP? I hope I've made this abundantly clear. That you clearly, I think everybody out there, nobody wants to breathe poison air. Nobody wants to drink poison water. Nobody wants poisoned food, and they want a pretty beautiful environment. But there's folks out there that don't want to do the hard work that's necessary to keep that state of things. We have a governor here in Florida that cares about it. Praise God. I'm sure a lot of folks are out there right now scratching their heads. Yeah, you know what? That is absolutely the case. Poison's getting dumped into waterways in the name of big business all over this country. And the right wing stands up and defends it. And they knock down and they denigrate and they shame anybody who tries to stand in their way. Because that's what the right wing tells them to do. It's what their talking head masters on Fox and talk radio tell them to do. Join us. Join us if you'd like to get read in on even more tactics and techniques of psychological operations. It's only $1 per month. Like I said, we can partner with Vimeo, and we can take the gloves off. And we can tell things, the truth about things, in an unvarnished way. We kind of did that here today a little bit. I'm sure I offended a lot of people. I'm sure there are going to be folks down there trying to type 16 paragraphs to say, well, the reason I'm for the environment but I'm not a socialist is this, that. Give me a break. Give me a break. There's no explaining it. If you've been a member of the Republican Party or the member of the right or, a Trump supporter, you have been for big business, big American business. And anybody who wants to stand in the way or say that this is not a good idea, you have called names. And now, looking at that giant cloud, you're one of them. God bless. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you guys next time. Have a great weekend.